Worry, anxiety, and stressing, and fretting, and resisting, even procrastinating. All those things are code for fear. And I'm highlighting that because today's message is all about that. Now, I have true confession, first of all, that I was down with a cold for most of the week. I looked kind of like the before in a cold remedy ad, the really bad ones. But I'm better. Thank God. I'm so happy to be feeling really great. There was a lot of love and prayer, and I'm grateful. Don't you notice that if you ever are down with something like that, and when you start to feel good, oh my goodness, what a gift. So, because of that, I did not have a lot of time to prepare a brand new talk for today, and I was getting ready for this afternoon's Dine and Discover presentation also. So I dusted off an updated one that I had done back in 2009. The essence of it, the story in it is from 2009. So I guess 9 years ago, I don't know. How many of you were here then? Well, a few, yes indeed. Okay. So we got Halloween coming up, and it's, for a lot of people, the favorite holiday. You know, yeah, how many of you admit to that? You do. A couple of you do. That it's your favorite holiday, and especially for kids, of course, it's a favorite holiday. And Halloween always reminds me of what a fun, wonderful time we can have making fun of all of our fears. It's once a year when we can actually exaggerate the scary things. I mean, it sounds kind of insane, really, if you didn't know it was a whole holiday with a lot of history. I mean, exaggerate scary things like skeletons and ghosts and ghouls and goblins and be entertained. And the worse they are, the more you laugh. There she is. She's loving it. I'm kind of on the fence with all of that. But it is a great opportunity to maybe put things into perspective. The other day I was driving down Orange Avenue, the lovely part of Orange Avenue that's kind of South Orange. Excuse me. And and it was in the afternoon, sunny afternoon, and I looked out the passenger side of my car. Beside me is a man on a motorcycle, and right behind him, on the back seat, riding right with his arms around him, is a skeleton, a full body skeleton. He's just riding along like, doesn't everybody? Has anybody seen this guy? I'm sure he's around. You haven't seen him yet. Well, keep your eyes open. I thought, well, now he's having fun with this holiday. So I kind of started to get into the spirit. So I like to take this opportunity then each year around Halloween to step up to our own fears and just say boo. Just say boo to them. Just not having it. And actually, the title of my message today is, What is Your Scary Story? What's your scary story? Because if you think about it, when we're afraid, there's a story around it. Generally, an event by itself isn't scary or not scary, it just is. But we get a story going. So, and I have several, and there are always new ones coming up too. So, and I imagine if, truth be told, we all do. But a story is just a story. It's not carved in stone. Just like FEAR, is not a carved in stone, defined, let's say carved in stone, or it's an acronym that can go either way, and I know you've heard many of them, but for example, FEAR, forget everything and run, or feel excited about risk. Same word. Could be a whole different story. We develop an ache, a pain we hadn't had before, a physical symptom, and high gear, probably several stories kick in. Or we encounter some other kind of difficulty, some other obstacle. Can be in any area of our life. It could be for someone we love. Stories. Immediately the stories kick in our minds. Or we watch the news. Lots and lots of stories we spin around what we see on the news, if we find it to be uplifting or frightening. And I don't know about you, but my storytelling is quick and versatile and kind of endless. Lots and lots of material. But because I'm aware of that's the key. That helps me to say, oh, wait, what is the story I'm telling, and maybe can I change that story? I'm going to share with you an experience that I had back in 2009, which is not a big hero kind of courage in the face of fear story. There are lots of those. I think we've all heard many, and been very moved by stories of people who have stepped up to really terrifying situations and transcended them, and all transcended their fears. But I'm picking one that happened to me that's kind of a day-to-day mundane story, because that's what we mostly experience every day, isn't it? It's kind of like those, every single day there's just some little thing that tempts us to, hey, come on, let's worry about that. Let's get anxious about that. So here's what happened. It was a Tuesday, and it was a beautiful day. It was busy. I'd had a lot of errands and met with some wonderful people and accomplished a lot, and it was just feeling great. And at about 5:30, I decided I needed to get gasoline in my car. So I stopped at that BP station on Fruitville, just this side of Target. It's about maybe half a mile this side of Target. And I finished fueling my tank, and I pulled out onto Fruitville again, heading east. And about, the equivalent of a quarter mile or less, I suddenly heard a really loud clunk, clunk on the back of my car. And I thought, something must have tipped over in my trunk. And then I thought, wait a minute, there's nothing in the trunk. So nothing could have tipped over. And then it hit me. I had a BlackBerry. That was back when we had BlackBerries, not iPhones yet. And I had set it on top of my car. Rule 1, do not ever set your phone on top of the car when you're anywhere. But I'd done that while filling my tank with gas, and I had, of course, forgotten. And that was the clunk clunk of the BlackBerry tumbling off my car's roof onto the trunk lid and onto the street, onto Fruitville. 6 lanes, busy 5:30 weekday, almost season, so it was a lot of traffic. And my heart just stopped. I panicked. I made a U-turn as quick as I could, and I drove back to that service station, parked my car alongside, grabbed my purse, and started walking up Fruitville on the sidewalk. There is a sidewalk there, thank goodness, and I was carefully scanning every single inch of the road as I moved, and I saw nothing. All the way, my heart is pounding, and I'm in a cold sweat, and of course I'm terrified, and I'm fearful, and I'm thinking of all the what-ifs. Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and she's also written some other books, but she said this about fear. And this is how I was feeling. She said, fear originates from a primal instinct for life preservation, and it's programmed by evolution to be hypervigilant and insanely overprotective. That's just what its job is. She said, so it's always going to assume that any uncertain outcome is destined for horrible disaster. And then she used this example. She said, basically, your fear is like a mall cop who thinks he's a Navy SEAL. He hasn't slept in days. He's all hopped up on Red Bull. And he's liable to shoot at his own shadow in an absurd effort to keep everyone safe. Now, this is not meant to be in any way demeaning to mall cops or to Navy SEALs or to Red Bull. Just that's our caveat there. But there I was in all its glory as I was searching for my phone. The mall cop was on the job. The stories went like, well, what if someone gets my phone and all that information that I have stored, what would they do with it? Security stuff, What if, and this is the real what if it likely gets run over by one of these cars or maybe several of them? There would be the daunting task of replacing all that information and then the expense of a new phone. So then I'm thinking, okay, it's getting late. What time does Verizon close. Maybe I can call. I don't know what they could do, but that was my thought process. And then I thought, I've got to call my husband, Erwin, because it was dinner time, and he likely had dinner prepared and would be wondering, where was I? All these thoughts going through my mind, scary, scary stories. I mean, I think I probably was experiencing the sweaty palms, the palpitating heart, and all the headache and everything else as much as I did, when the hurricane was about to hit. It's just, that was fear. So all these thoughts are going through. I get up to Target, haven't seen anything yet, so I cross over Fruitville, and I walked all the way back to the station. And this time I was on the center island, so that I knew it had to be on that side of the road in the direction I had been going. So I'm on the center island, traffic whizzing by, looking. And, of course, just to keep things interesting, there was that added fear of what if I get hit by a car. There's that. Still seeing nothing. And then another little sort of subset of fears, like this one came in, like I left my car just parked at the BP station. It was not in a parking place designated. What if it's towed? What if they tow, they don't know who it belongs to, they tow it away. Thinking about, and where you can find, if you've ever had your car towed, finding it, paying to get it out, all of that added to the fun. Now, I have to tell you that being a minister and having been a minister for a number of years, even at that time, underneath all of this tumult, I did occasionally remember what we teach. It kind of kicks in, and you kind of say, yeah, I know, okay, I'm going to be okay. But. And so that was my mind was ricocheting back and forth between, now just relax, you're going to be okay, all is well, all is good. But then the stories would kick in, and the stories are very powerful. And then beyond my white-knuckle fear, of course, I entertained the slight idea that what I really want is to find my BlackBerry intact, undamaged, but that seemed like an unlikely miracle. How could that happen? I mean, every scenario where I imagined that might happen, I thought, Karen, you're crazy. That's impossible. And by this time, not having seen anything, gone both ways on Fruitville, it seemed like the phone must have just flat evaporated. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. There's one way I could have survived. Maybe by some miracle it didn't fall all the way to the ground, but had landed on my trunk. I mean, I hadn't even looked at the lid of my trunk. I was so sure it was in the street that I grabbed my purse and went running down the street. And I thought, well, maybe it's on the trunk. Oh, so my heart is beating. I'm thinking, this is great. As I approached the BP station, I looked hopefully, eagerly, to see if my phone just might possibly be on the trunk lid, and my heart sank because it was not. Now, by this time, it's been about 45 minutes or more since this all began, and I realized that before this had all started, I had also meant to use the restroom at the filling station, at the BP station. 45 minutes later, I really needed to use the restroom, especially with all that nervous energy. Ever been there, or am I the only one? So I got the key from the BP. This is when they had to have a big key on a wooden thing, and I went inside, got the key, went around outside to where the restroom was, and came back, gave him the key back, and then went outside because I had seen a quaint thing out there called a payphone. Remember those? There was a payphone. I thought, well, I better start making some phone calls. So I was digging in my purse for a quarter to use the payphone that was outside there, and scared. And, well, there's more. I'll tell you in a moment. But I want to interject another little story that just came to my attention this week about dealing with fear. It's a story about a little girl named Emily, and it's a true story. She was terminally ill in a pediatric hospital, and her favorite nurse was Bob. And Bob always made her feel safe He was fun, and they really became good friends. And occasionally, little Emily would talk about someone named Chucky Lee who would come and visit her, and that someday Chucky Lee was going to come and take her away. And so one day Bob asked, "Who is Chucky Lee?" And Emily said, "Well, Chucky Lee is death." And Bob said, "Well, are you frightened?" And she said, "Oh, yes, I am, very much. And mostly he comes at night." And so Bob said, "Well, at night when you feel Chucky Lee is here, is there anything you can do to help feel better?" And she said, "Oh, yes, oh, yes. You have to sing Jingle Bells. You have to sing Jingle Bells." One day not long after that, Bob asked Emily how her night had been. She got very close and conspiratorial, and she said, "Well, last night I had to sing Jingle Bells 3 times very, very loud out of the mouths of babes." A story. She had a story that was kind of scary, and she had memories of Christmas, of Jingle Bells, another story that she pulled out to help her in the face of her fear. Now, my situation was not life and death, not like little Emily facing her own her own mortality at such a young age, but it felt like it. It felt like it. And actually, I guess had I known about her strategy back then, I might have started singing Jingle Bells. Who cared at that point? Out Fruitville. So back to the payphone. As I approached that phone, the station manager came outside and asked me, "Is that your car parked there?" And I thought, oh, of course. In my positive frame of mind, I assumed the worst. I thought, he's going to really chew me out for leaving my car there, probably fine me or something. And I said, "Well, yes, it is." And he said, "Well, I found your phone. It was laying on the trunk lid." Well, I wanted to hug that man, openly, blatantly. But then he said, "I got so worried because your car was there for so long and the phone was just lying there on the trunk. I was sure something bad had happened to whomever it belonged to." Story. "So I called 911, he said. And I'm standing there trying to process all this. And I told him what had happened. I assured him that I was okay, and better than okay, now that my BlackBerry was found and intact. Well, he said, "Come on in the station because we have to call 911 back and tell them you're okay, and I need you to verify this." So we're going inside the station, and here comes my husband, Erwin, on wheelies, driving into the station for all he's worth, because he had gotten in the act. And how did that happen? Well, the station manager said that my home phone number was in the BlackBerry. And so out of desperation, I've got to find out who this belongs to and how I can help. So he had called home, and Erwin answered and was obviously furious. Well, he was terrified. He had a story too. But when he came and saw me, he was alternately relieved and furious, yes. So there we are, letting out 911 know that I'm okay. 2 calls had gone into 911 to rescue me. And in the meantime, Erwin said, "Well, while I was waiting, I was so worried, and I didn't know who to talk to, so I called our friend Jim Grove." Many of you know Jim Grove. And he's been like family for years, and so, that's who Erwin called. And he couldn't get a hold of Jim, but he left a message that you can imagine. Someone who's all verklempt about this was not just a, "Hi, how are you?" And I thought, oh, good. Now Jim gets to be scared and have a story, too. But we'll get it all sorted out, and I'll call Jim. Excuse me, so I did. But I couldn't get a hold of him. But that wouldn't have been so bad if I could have left a message. But the thing was, he did pick up, but he was in the car driving to Tampa. And so the static on the phones was such that we couldn't hear each other. So once he would have gotten the other message from Erwin about where is she, he probably would have thought, oh my God, she's trying to call for help and I can't hear her. And he was on his way to Tampa. Well, I called his home phone and left a message and said, all is well. In the meantime, hoping he would get about his business, and when he got home, he would know that everything was cool. So it had a happy ending. It had a happy ending. But do you see how many stories I was telling myself, and what were they doing? They were scaring me even more. And none of them were true. None were true. And that's why I'm telling you this, because I'd like you to just ask yourself, do I have any scary stories? Or what are my scary stories? Maybe there's one going on right now. 3 things about that then. Remember, it's a thought. It's in your mind. A story is a thought. And you and I don't have to believe everything we think. We learn that all the time in this wonderful teaching of science of mind, that we don't have to believe every thought that floats through our mind. And we remind ourselves of that very popular affirmation: change your thinking, change your life. Change your story, change your situation. Second thing about this to remember, as Bob sang in that song, there was a line in there that says, I'll live in the moment. I will live in the moment. I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to fret. I'll live in the moment, because the whole thing is in Spirit's hands. And that struck me, because if you think about your story again, your fear, it's always based on what happened before or what might happen in the future. I couldn't think of a single situation where it wasn't. It might be even within a few moments on either side of the experience, but still, it's not in the moment. And of course, a whole lot of it is way, way outside that. I mean, we could reel those things in and say, wait a minute, let's just get into the now moment. And the third, by the way, it's not easy to do that. I know that. I understand. I'm still working on that. But it works. It really does work. And it is the truth. And the third thing is, as Ernest Holmes, the architect of our philosophy, said, don't fight your fears. Don't fight your fears. That's important, because I think when there's a tendency to think, well, I know all these positive affirmations, so I'm not going to let that fear get me. I'm, kind of get away from me. And what you resist persists. So he says, don't fight them, just see through them. I walk by faith, not by sight. See through them. And here's the punchline: because there is nothing in God's world to be afraid of. Nothing in God's world. Nothing in the big picture to be afraid of. In the immediate, maybe yes. But we're always taken care of, lifted, guided. Somehow there's something bigger that we say, wait, what was I so afraid of? Let me close with this line that I love so much from A Course in Miracles. If you knew who walks beside you, fear would be impossible. Namaste. A happy Halloween.